Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a great weekend. Welcome to our live show, where we have a conversation on finances with Themba Mazibuko, a financial coach. You can share the video. You can also take somebody, and if you have any questions, you can type in the comment section. And if you also have any comments relevant to what we're discussing, you can also comment in the comment section. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon. Let's have a conversation. Your participation is greatly appreciated. Robert Kiyosaki says the philosophy of the rich and the poor is this: the rich invest their money and spend what is left. The poor spend their money and invest what is left. Do we have any financial news in this week, Themba?
Thanks, Stefadzwa, for this opportunity to talk about financial independence. I think I would want to bring to the attention of our viewers 4 issues. The first issue is around an inequality report that was published by Oxfam, which is an NGO that is concerned about global inequality. So they published their report in time for the discussions that were going on at Davos in this week. And some of the things that I found interesting in that report is, number one, South Africa is the most unequal country in the world. That has always been the case, and it still continues to be the case. The other thing that I found very, very interesting is that inequality is actually worsening in the world. So some of the things that they say in that report is that since 2020, the richest 5 people in the world have doubled their fortunes. In other words, in the past 3 years, your billionaires have actually seen a 100% increase in their fortunes. During the same 3-year period, almost 5 billion people in the world have become poorer. So hardship and hunger are a daily reality for many people in the world. And according to Oxfam, it will take 230 years to end poverty. So it will take a long time to end poverty in the world. But they also predict that we could have the first trillionaire in a decade. So within the next 10 years, we are likely going to have the first trillionaire. I guess one of the most important insights for me from this report is that one is to take their financial destiny into their own hands. I think the current system that we have is actually tilted towards the people that have got capital. So as somebody probably like me who was born with not much capital, I think the best way to join the people that are making all the money in the world is to take your financial destiny into your hands. Don't rely on the current system to actually correct inequality. I don't think that will happen. What we are actually seeing on the ground is that inequality is worsening. And that's one of the things that we always try to communicate on this show, that it's high time that you educate you educate yourself financially and begin to take practical steps to improve your financial situation. Otherwise, the odds are tilted against the majority of the people. Just to read from the Oxfam report, they are basically talking about, to end extreme inequality, governments must radically redistribute the power of billionaires and corporations back to the ordinary people. So they are almost saying that there needs to be a revolution where there is a redistribution of wealth. I've heard people talking about radical economic transformation, radical. Is it going to happen? I don't think so. I think the corporations and the billionaires actually control what is happening, in the world. They are basically saying a more equal world is possible if governments effectively regulate and reimagine the private sector. In my view, I don't see this happening because the people with the money tend to rule, this world. So that's the first thing that I wanted to just discuss. The second thing I wanted to discuss is these discussions that have been going on at Davos in Switzerland in this week. Tafadzwa, every year, all the prominent politicians and prominent um, chief executive officers of this world, let's just call them the global elite, gather at this resort in Switzerland and talk about global issues. And, I think they call it the World Economic, Forum. So if you want to know what the elite are discussing, you just follow, the Davos discussions. So I've been following the Davos discussions in this week, and there are three particular issues that I would want to bring to the attention of our viewers. I think the first thing is most economists and central bankers in this world have got a consensus that interest rates are going to be higher for a longer time. In fact, that's one of the sentiment that came out of Davos in this week. In fact, our very own central bank governor in South Africa did, share the same sentiment. And when he communicated that sentiment at Davos, we actually saw the rand, hitting 19 rands to the US dollar, because of that statement, there. The second thing, surprise, surprise, that people were talking about in Davos, which was quite prominent in their discussion, is that they were actually discussing the possibility of Trump becoming the president of America again. I found that very, very interesting. In fact, most of the executives from America are actually predicting a Trump presidency. We also predicted the same, thing. And the Europeans are worried about a Trump presidency. I just found that very interesting. There was quite a lot of discussions around geopolitical risks. So one of the things that I picked up is because of the destruction that has happened in Gaza, where Israel is fighting Hamas. I think it will take something like 15 billion to reconstruct Gaza, which I found, very, very interesting there. And everyone was talking about a lasting peace solution in Israel. Obviously, another geopolitical event is what is going on in the Red Sea. So some of the executives were actually talking about an alternative supply route, ships going all around Africa to avoid the Red Sea, which would obviously result in global shipping costs going up and further impacting inflation. So those are some of the things that people were discussing at Davos. So Tafadzo, one day you will make money if you put into practice what we are discussing here. Maybe you'll join the discussions that I have going on in Davos. The other thing, I came across a report done by PricewaterhouseCoopers where they surveyed some chief executive officers in the world in terms of what the issues are that they are concerned about. And 45% of the CEOs actually pointed out that climate change and artificial intelligence are some of the issues that they are concerned about. And business models could fail if they don't adapt to those two issues, artificial intelligence and climate change. And then the last thing that I want to discuss is, I don't know if it's a business news as such, but it's an issue that has to do with the integrity of qualifications. So in South Africa, people were talking about a certain economist, a woman economist, Themba Mazibuko, who is alleged to be holding a fake PhD. And the discussion actually broadened into, people discussing how do you verify qualifications. But to me, I think it's a question of, there are two issues that I want to raise about the Themba Mazibuko issue. Number one is how to handle crisis. I think when she was confronted about, her claims that she's got a PhD, and when I listened to her interview, I don't think she handled it, very, very, well. When you are handling a crisis, it's always important to be truthful, because we are living in a world where people can verify things. It's an interconnected world. If you are claiming to have the qualification from a particular institution, people can independently go to that, institution. So if you have not been honest and somebody confronts you, the best way to handle a crisis is always to be truthful. Don't dig a deeper hole for yourselves, in trying to handle, the crisis. I don't think she has handled it very well. From what I can see now, she's gone underground. And because if people are saying you've got a fake qualification, all you need to do is just to produce the qualification, give them your student number, and let them verify. If you don't, just come out and say, look, I've not been truthful, or this is the basis upon which I've been claiming that I've got a PhD. So the best way to handle a crisis is always to be truthful in everything that you say. And then the second thing that I would want to say, which may be relevant to all of us, is that it's possible to destroy your career in one day because of lack of integrity. And so it's very, very important that as we build our world, we also, are truthful in our dealings. In my career, I have seen businesses being destroyed overnight because people have not operated with integrity, particularly with regard to tax affairs, particularly with regard to claims that we are making. I think it's very, very important that we've got processes to check. The other discussion that has been going on around this issue is how then companies should tighten their processes of verifying qualifications, particularly when appointing directors to boards. It's become necessary for them to tighten that process. So I can almost predict that going forward, companies are going to tighten their governance processes and verifying qualifications. So always be truthful. Don't overstate your qualifications. In fact, when I look at Tabi, she's very brilliant, she's knowledgeable, and it was totally, totally unnecessary. If it turns out that she's got a fake PhD, it was totally, totally unnecessary for her to make this particular claim. She doesn't need a PhD to do what she's doing. So those are some of the issues that I would want to bring to the attention of our viewers, Tafadzo.
Thank you very much. Yes, I listened to the conversation of the lady, and her argument was her name changed after she had attained the PhD. So I'm not sure whether that was convincing enough, but yes, it was the talk of the week, and they were encouraging the matrix to study and to acquire genuine PhDs. So if you're out there and you desire to have a PhD, I think we can learn from that lady that you have to do the work. Yeah, you would say that you hope that I will implement. Well, I'm the number one student here for the financial independence. I've actually become very passionate about it. About finances. This week I was listening to a speaker who was talking about 7 currencies that buy money. And one of the currencies was meekness, humility, and teachability. So he said, do not have an I know it all attitude if you want to know about wealth and to be financially independent. So as a point of action, I've actually noted down that I need to check out Davos. I had not heard about them, so definitely it's my homework for the week. Would you define financial independence and explain how my earlier quote by Robert Kiyosaki relates to the concept of financial independence?
Thanks, Stefazo. So 3 things that I would want to say right at the onset. The first thing is that for you to attain financial independence, you've got to have a plan. So most of what we'll talk about today is about having a plan. You're not going to become financially independent by accident. I think let me just make it very, very clear. You have to have a plan. We've spoken about inequality, how inequality is worsening. That's a global reality. It's a reality and has been a reality in South Africa for many, many years. So you've got to have a plan. The second thing that we'll highlight here is that it's a process. It's a process. You've got to go through a process. And most of what we'll talk about, is all about the 3, steps in that process. But also it's a mindset. It's a mindset where, which is underpinned by developing the right habits. At the beginning of this show, Tafazo, you quoted what Robert Kiyosaki said, and he says there's a difference between how the poor and the rich conduct their affairs. The rich invest first and they spend afterwards. The poor do the opposite. When they get money, they spend first and they invest afterwards. So one of the things that we would want to say there is that the way you manage your budget, particularly if you want to be financially independent, should be such that you prioritize investment. In last week's show, Tafadzo, we highlighted that everyone should have a plan of separating at least 10% of their disposable income towards, investment. So let me go to your question. What is financial independence? Here is how I would put it very, very simply, Tafadzo. We all have expenses. We all have expenses on a monthly basis. We have to incur certain expenses. What most people do is that they cover those expenses from their salaries or from their earned, income. So when we talk about income, we've to introduce the concept of quality of income. So before I define what financial independence is, let's just also state this fact that incomes are not the same. There are certain incomes that have got a higher quality than other incomes. For example, let me just compare 2 kinds of incomes. Let's just say person A earns 100 rands and their income is from a salary. And then person B also gets 100 rands on a monthly basis, but their income is from dividends that come from investments. When you look at these 2 income streams, the one who is earning a salary has got an income stream which has got a lower quality compared to the one who is earning dividends. So what is a quality income stream? A quality income stream is an income stream that you get without much effort. In other words, it's an income stream that does not require your active involvement. That's an income stream that has got a higher quality. So when we talk about the concept of financial independence, we're talking about you being able to generate on a monthly basis a quality income stream that does not require your active involvement. That quality income stream is what we are referring to as passive income. So it's income that comes to your bank account without your active involvement. That income stream is to be generated from an asset base, and that asset base could be investments, it could be a property, whatever it is. So when you get to a situation where your passive income covers your monthly expenses, at that stage, you have become financially independent. So if you look at the situation of most people, they cover their monthly expenses from an income stream of a low quality, that is salary. So in that passive income stream, we are not including a salary. A salary does not qualify as part of the definition of a passive income stream. So financial independence is where you are generating a passive income which is greater than your monthly expenses. And that's what we call financial independence. It's something that does not happen by accident unless you get an inheritance, which only the rich can pass to their children. Unless you get an inheritance. The situation with most people is you go to school, and then you get a job, and then once you get a job, you start earning a salary. At that point, you're not financially independent. At that point, then the question may be asked: what if I get to retirement and I'm earning, a pension? Can I be said to be financially independent? At that stage, statistics are showing us that when most people retire, it's unlikely that you will be able to generate an income stream from your retirement savings that would cover your monthly expenses, your current monthly expenses. So when we talk about financial independence, we're talking about being able to generate an income stream which covers your current lifestyle. We need to distinguish, and for the purposes of this show, I normally make a distinction between financial security, financial independence, and financial freedom, because sometimes those terms can be used interchangeably. And the way we make a distinction is we define financial security as a passive income stream which covers your basic living expenses. So at that stage, at least you have attained financial security. Then if you get to a stage where your passive income covers your current lifestyle, then you have attained financial independence. You may get to a stage where your passive income covers your ideal lifestyle. So the ideal lifestyle that we are talking about here for most people is it has to do with luxury expenses, going on holiday, for example, buying a Rolex watch, or, anything that you consider to be ideal. If you get to a stage where your passive income can finance your ideal lifestyle, then you have attained financial freedom. So it's a process. We start with financial security, financial independence, and then eventually you get to a stage where you've attained, financial, freedom. And that's where we would want to be. It's a process. It's as a result of a deliberate plan, that we have to execute on. So let me stop there, Tafadzwa. I hope that related to what Robert Kiyosaki said. Over to you.
Thank you, Themba. Yes, last week I posted a quote on the page that if you are not financially independent by the time you are 40 or 50, it doesn't mean that you are living in the wrong country or at the wrong time. It simply means that you have a wrong plan. And that's what Jim Rohn said. If I recall last week, you mentioned about location, that if one wants to be a billionaire, maybe their location, like mostly, you mentioned say, a couple of countries where the billionaires are, like US, I think South Africa, Swaziland. How do we reconcile that with that statement where he says, you've also spoken about a plan today, that you can't be financially independent without a plan. How do we reconcile that? Or it's if you then want to be a billionaire, it's like you're going an extra mile, so location here affects. If you just want to be financially independent, it's something that's personal.
Very good question, Tafadzo. Great question. So location is a factor. It's a factor on you becoming financially independent, but also it's a factor in terms of how long it's going to take you to be financially independent. There are two considerations here. This first consideration is the economic environment. The second consideration is the political environment. So let's just talk about the economic environment first. If you are in a location or a jurisdiction where inflation is very, very high, it means that your monthly expenses are increasing at a very fast rate. And the extent to which you are generating that passive income may not necessarily keep up with the rate at which your monthly living expenses are increasing. So it stands to reason then that environments that have got high inflation are not conducive environments where somebody can be financially independent. So that's the first consideration. So if you want to be financially independent, it's either you go into a location where inflation is very low and you're likely going to generate that income in a stream because your monthly expenses are not increasing at a rapid rate. Or you actually invest in assets, in an asset base that protects the value of your assets, right? So say, for example, you're living in an environment, and let me give Zimbabwe as an example, because it's a documented case of hyperinflation there. It's not as if you are living in Zimbabwe, you cannot be financially independent. It's possible to be financially independent. It's hard though, but the only way you can be financially independent in that environment is to then invest in assets that preserve value. In other words, assets whose value are increasing at a rate which is higher than inflation. And in Zimbabwe, it's typically investing in property and investing in other businesses that are growing at a faster rate than inflation. So that's the economic environment consideration. But then there is another consideration which has to do with the political environment. Remember what we said. Most governments are faced with the issue around inequality and how they have to redistribute the wealth. So when you want to be financially independent, look for a territory where the policies in terms of the economic environment are such that effort is rewarded. And those environments mainly tend to be capitalist, systems rather than, socialist systems or communist systems. So when we look at political systems, it's more likely that in a capitalist system, you're likely going to create wealth, or in an environment where policies are such that those people who work hard will be rewarded. And those mainly tend to be environments where corruption is under control. So I wouldn't go into a territory where there are high levels of corruption. and where there is a political elite that controls, the most of the wealth. So in political environments where the political elite control everything and where there are high levels of corruption, it's unlikely that you'll be financially independent the right way. So that's how location determines whether you're going to be financially independent and how long it's going to take you to be financially independent, Tafazo.
Thank you. You've answered the question very well. To those who are watching now, you can post your questions if you have any questions, and you can also share the video, and also encourage even those who are going to watch later. We encourage you to share the video. Let's grow together. Today is a how presentation. What are the steps to achieving financial independence?
You're spot on. I think one of the things that we would want to achieve in this presentation is to really articulate how you can be financially independent. It's very, very possible to be financially independent. The way I look at it is that financial independence is a process, and that process has got 3 stages. In stage number 1, let's look at the things that you need to do first before you even attempt on this journey of financial independence. There are certain preconditions of financial independence. So let's refer to these preconditions as the foundation of financial independence. In my mind, there are 3 preconditions, and we've been talking about these preconditions, Tafadzwa, in previous shows. So think of attaining financial independence as, building a house. A house has to have a foundation. And that foundation constitutes what I'm calling the preconditions for financial independence. Number 1, you need to create an emergency fund. So don't embark on a journey of financial independence before you even create an emergency fund. Number 2, you need to become debt-free. We've always distinguished between good debt and bad debt. Here, we basically saying you must be debt-free as far as bad debt is concerned. So bad debt is debt that you have acquired because you have consumed something. So debt that has been accumulated as a result of consumption, that's bad debt. It's debt that you accumulated and it wasn't it wasn't used, the money wasn't used to fund the generation of an income stream or to fund the purchase of an asset that increases in value. And then obviously the third aspect is building, savings. So those are the 3 actions that you need to put in place. Once you've put the foundation in place, you then go to implement. And when you are implementing, you have to go through a mind mapping, exercise. The journey to financial independence will not look the same for all individuals. What I normally say to people as part of that implementation is that number 1, set a goal. Set a goal. How long is it going to take you to be financially independent? When I embarked on this plan myself, I set a goal of becoming financially independent in 5 years. And having gone through that process, I can put hand on heart and confidently say that based on this methodology, it does not matter how much you earn, it's very possible to be financially independent within a 5-year period. Obviously, within that 5-year period, you will have to make sacrifices. You're not going to build a house, this house for financial independence, without making certain sacrifices. And part of what I would want to give as an advice to all of us is that you may need to put in place or implement a frugal lifestyle. So the key word today is frugality. When I observe around the world, I begin to see that some of the people that have attained financial independence are people who are not careless when it comes to spending money. They are actually frugal when it comes to spending their hard-earned money. As part of that implementation process, you also need to put a plan to convert your hard-earned income into a passive income stream. And the way you do that is through investments. And part of an obvious implementation plan is to set aside at least 10% of your income towards investment. But beyond that, you also need to brainstorm on ideas of how you can become financially independent. It could be creating a side hustle business. It could be starting, a real business and becoming an entrepreneur. If you read writings of people like Robert Kiyosaki, he's one guy who's convinced that for you to be financially independent, it's either you become a business owner or you become a fully fledged investor. He doesn't believe you can become financially independent as an employee. And I hold the same view. The only other view that I would want to add to what Robert Kiyosaki has written in his books is that, yes, it's possible to be financially independent as an employee. Although, if you are to do that, you have to adopt an entrepreneurial mindset. In these days, there are people who earn quite a lot of money, even as employees. For example, there are CEOs who earn in South Africa, 200 million a year, who earn 300 million a year. There are executives who earn millions in a year. When you reach that level in an organization, it becomes important. It becomes very, very possible to be financially independent, provided you manage your debt very well and you implement a frugal, lifestyle. So the long and short of what I'm trying to say is that it's possible to be financially independent as an employee as long as you change your mindset. And part of changing that mindset is number one, negotiating um, shares as part of remunerations. That's what some employees have done. I think last week we were talking about Steve, Ballmer, who was a Microsoft employee at one stage, employed, and eventually became CEO of Microsoft. And when he was CEO of Microsoft, he got paid in shares and he held on to those shares. So you're not going to be financially independent if you are in the habit of buying and selling assets. Most of the people that eventually become financially independent are people that hold on to income producing shares over a long period of time. The mistake that most people make is that they embark on this journey of financial independence, and then at some stage, they are discouraged by the investment return, and then they sell their shares. You have to be very patient and be invested at least for that time period that you have set for yourself as a goal of becoming financially independent. So let me just show a slide which summarizes, the way I look at the implementation phase of becoming financially independent. So number one, become very frugal in your expenses. You need to minimize your expenses. You need to manage your expenses. Probably next week, Tafadzwa, because we don't have time on this show, we may want to elaborate on how to live a lifestyle of frugality. How to be frugal, and I will give you ideas of living a lifestyle of frugality. But just to give you some of the examples of what I will be talking about there, one of the things that I will put on a table is buy at wholesale prices instead of retail prices. That's part of being frugal, because if you buy something at retail prices, you pay more. If you buy at wholesale prices, you pay less. So that's part of being frugal in your spending. Another way of being frugal is considering the life cycle cost of something. So if you're buying shoes, for example, that are going to last for more than a year, you'd want to buy shoes that are durable, that you're going to use for a number of years, so that the life cycle cost is actually lower. That's part of frugality. Another aspect of frugality is not upgrading your lifestyle every time your income grows. Because the mistake that most people make is that when their income grows, they feel rich and therefore they upgrade their lifestyle. They go for the bigger car, they go for the bigger house. And because you're always increasing your expenses every time your income grows, you're not going to be financially independent there, because your expenses are almost increasing at the same rate that your income is increasing. If I look at in the financial habits of people like Warren Buffett, for example, Warren Buffett hasn't upgraded his house in the last 30 years. He's lived in the same house for the past 30 years. He has not upgraded. And that's sort of the mindset of frugality. When we talk about frugality, we're not talking about being cheap. That's not so. So I'm not talking about being cheap in how you spend. I'm talking about being careful in terms of how you spend your money, and not being wasteful in terms of how you spend your money. It's about planning. Say, for example, you'd want to go on holiday at the end of the year. Then you plan 6 months in advance so that you can take advantage of discounts. It's part of frugality. You're not compromising on the quality of your holiday, but you're just being careful on how much you are spending on that holiday. So frugality is an aspect of how you're going to implement this financial independence, plan. Then the other aspect is you need to grow your income, and you need to grow your income at a rate that is higher than inflation. Remember what we said last week. The greatest enemy that you've got when it comes to investment and when it comes to financial independence is inflation. So you need to grow your income at a rate that is higher than inflation. If you're an employee, it's making sure that you get a salary increase which is higher than inflation. It's making sure that you put in the hard work so that you are promotable and you get to be promoted, and you are strategic in terms of how you manage your career. If you are an entrepreneur, it's about making investments in high growth industries. And because you are being frugal, you're growing your income, you're going to see that you're going to have a higher disposable income, which you then invest in equity. We like equity as an asset base. Remember, the money that you're going to have left over, because the rich invest first before they spend, and that is the mindset that you're going to have going forward. We like people that invest in equity because it's been shown through many research articles that equity is an asset class that beats inflation over time. So part of what you need to do in building that asset base is to invest in equity. So we like equity, we like property. Those are the asset classes that we advise people to invest in as part of a plan of becoming financially independent. If you increase your entrepreneurial abilities, you may want to start a business in a high growth area. Most of the people that have attained financial freedom are people that have become entrepreneurs. So it's something that you might also want to do, over time. And then the long and short of it is that some of the actions that you need to take in becoming financially independent is to set a goal, decide on a frugal lifestyle, and decide on the asset base. In other words, the type of investments that you're going to make based on the competencies that you have and also based on the knowledge that you have acquired over time. Those are the practical steps that you can take in becoming financially independent. But at the end of the day, this is the state of financial independence. It's about creating an asset base from which you are going to generate a passive income, and that passive income stream will then outstrip your monthly expenses. So think of financial independence as an equation. On the one hand, you're trying to minimize your monthly expenses. On the other hand, you're trying to grow your income stream. Later on, we're going to talk about Tafadzo probably in a future show. We can talk about creating different income streams, particularly in an uncertain environment where it might not be a wise thing to rely on one income stream. You might want to create a number of income streams. Let's just call it diversification, so that you may manage risk, because managing risk is a very important thing in terms of attaining financial independence, Tafadzo. But let me stop there. Hopefully I've outlined the practical steps, the how. Financial independence is a process. You need to have the building blocks in place. You need to have a plan in place. You need to brainstorm on how that journey will evolve, for you. That's basically what financial independence is.
I think the challenge, thank you for that. The challenge that we normally have is when you don't have money and you see something, you have this one day is one day mentality. So when the money comes, to think of investing first, maybe there was that dress you've always wanted. When money comes, you just want to go and spoil yourself. So we're being encouraged that you need to invest first and not think of maybe spoiling yourself or paying your. I don't know whether that's paying yourself first. Is that paying yourself first, Themba?
It is paying yourself first. It is paying yourself first, Tafadzo. But you're raising a very important point there. If you were to allow me, I always tell people, if as a financial coach, I always tell people this: if you were to allow me to get a sense of how you spend money when you get it, then I can almost predict whether you're going to be financially independent or not. So it's very easy to tell, Tafadzo, whether somebody is going to be financially independent, or not. It's even possible to predict, say you've got 2 children, right? You give them an equal amount of money. You can almost tell from how they spend their money whether eventually they are going to be financially independent adults, or not. Because there is this concept of delayed gratification. If you are an individual that cannot delay gratification, because the difference between those that become financially independent and those that fail to attain financial independence is that those that attain financial independence also desire to live a luxury lifestyle, but then they delay that. And the reason why they delay that, which is why we're talking about the concept of frugality, is because they would want to build an asset base from which they can then finance their luxury, lifestyle. And then when they have built a large enough asset base, they are then able to live their lifestyle. So at the end of the day, Tafadzo, it boils down to delayed gratification. If you're the kind of individual that if you find money, for example, you would want to use that hard-earned money to fulfill your luxury lifestyle or your ideal lifestyle, you're not going to be financially independent. That's the long and short of it.
Yes, you are emphasizing on delayed gratification, because we find even at work there are people who wait month end when they get the salary. That first week of the month, they'll be buying from fast foods. Then when they don't have money, then they start bringing the lunch boxes, because one has been waiting, and in their heads it's like, when I get the money. But we are being told that if you are happy with cooking food and if it helps saving, then you need to be disciplined and consistent. I was listening to a show on financial resilience, and the person mentioned that it's not about savings, but it's about turning your savings into investments. Yeah, you mentioned that the preconditions of financial independence, one of it is to build cushion savings. How do we reconcile? Like, when do you turn your savings into investments? Or do you have an account where you specifically just keep savings, then take a bit for investments? And also, you were talking about equity. Are there any shares currently that you'd recommend, maybe for us to invest in, which will give a return in the long run, a good return in the long run?
So 2 questions that you're asking there, Tafadzo. There is a huge difference between savings and investments. Savings are, say you've got an objective of a wedding, Tafadzo. You want to wed. You then separate an amount of money so that you don't, finance that wedding out of debt. That's a saving. So that money is available for an objective, and it normally tends to be a short-term objective. So the difference between savings and investments is that savings is normally money that you accumulate for a short-term objective. You want to buy, you want to save for a deposit for a house. That's a savings. Savings are normally related to short-term objectives. Savings is money that you keep in a bank for those short-term objectives. On the other hand, investments are related to long-term objectives. So investments are related to an asset base, right? So investments are linked to an asset base. They are linked to shares, they are linked to properties. You always link investments to an asset class. And when we talk about money in the bank, it's not an asset class. It's money that you're just separating to be able to finance a short-term objective. So that's the difference between savings and investments. The other difference has to do with the objective of beating inflation. Normally, you're not going to beat inflation using savings. You're going to beat inflation with investments, because investments is how you're going to make financial progress, there. So when I put the savings cushion under the building blocks for financial independence, I am providing for instances where you might want to, save for specific purposes, save for educational purposes, save for a wedding, save to buy, shoes, or whatever it is, whatever that short-term objective is. You need a savings cushion for that, so that you don't finance that expense using debt. So that answers your first question. Savings are not going to make you financially independent. Let's just be very clear. There is nobody who has become financially independent because they are a good saver. And you can quote me on that, Tafadzo. Even if you are the best saver there is, Have you ever grown in a household where the mother is very careful about saving money? They save quite a lot when it comes to purchasing goods. Uh, in spite of their best attempts, they don't become financially independent, because financial independence is as a result of a long-term objective. So great savers don't necessarily become financially independent. Then the second aspect of your question, had to do with me recommending shares. Let's reserve that for a future show, Tafazo. The reason why I don't want to recommend shares at this stage is because we haven't spoken about investing. I would want our audience to learn the principles of investing first, because there are principles of investing. And then once you have learned the principles of investing, I will lead you through the practical steps. And then only then do I recommend certain shares. In any event, Tafadzwa, one of the things that we're trying to do is to create an exclusive group of people that subscribe to our services. And it's only that group of people that we will then give our recommendations to. So we don't necessarily give recommendations to everyone and say, invest in these shares, invest in that share, until we've given the principles. And that's normally advice that is reserved for an exclusive group of people.
Thank you, Themba. What are the odds of achieving financial independence, and how can the chances of achieving financial independence be increased?
So we started off the show, Tafazo, by talking about this global inequality report. So from what, and it's not my words, Tafazo, it's it's Oxfam's words. What we are going to see is that poverty is going to increase. And I quoted from an Oxfam report, it's going to take forever, 230 years. So it's not going, poverty is not going to be eliminated in our lifestyle. There is even a statement in the Bible which says the poor you're always going to have. So poor people will always be there, and the poverty is increasing in the world. So if you consider the fact that poverty is increasing and that the richer are becoming richer, which means that the odds of people becoming financially independent are becoming harder by the day, which is why you need to be very, very deliberate, about it. So if I were to come to statistics, I was looking at some of the statistics, Tafadzo, and this statistic applies to South Africa. The richest 1% in South Africa own 95% of, of all the shares and the bonds in South Africa, right? So that's a huge thing. When we started talking about financial independence, people were talking about the 10% owning. In fact, it started years ago. You might have heard about the 80-20 rule, Tafadzo. That 80-20 rule was actually promulgated by an Italian economist called Vilfredo Pareto. It's called the Pareto rule. Years ago, Pareto, this guy called Vilfredo Pareto, he was the first economist to make an observation that 20% of the people own 80% of the wealth in the world. That was in the 1960s, in the 1800s. Now we are actually talking in South Africa of 1% of the population owning 95% of the wealth in South Africa. So what it shows is that from the time that Vilfredo Pareto gave the 80-20 rule, inequality has been worsening, right? It's been worsening. And I normally say to people, even if you are saving for retirement through your pension fund, you're not likely to be financially independent. So you need to take your financial destiny into your hands. That's how you increase the odds. You don't rely on advisors that say, let me manage your money. You need to educate yourself financially, You need to get a financial coach or a mentor to lead you through the journey, to give you the tools, and to give you advice on how that is going to be done. Because financial coaching, financial mentoring will increase your odds of becoming financially independent. That's the long and short of it. Otherwise, the odds are actually decreasing by the day, Tafadza.
When you spoke about Pareto, you took me back to my days of university. I think the more I attend these courses, the more I might change my mind to pursue a PhD in finance. What would be your closing remarks? And if anyone wants to have personal financial coaching, or if they want that advice, which you just mentioned, that if people want advice on the equity to invest in and be helped individually, where do they contact you, or how can they get through to you?
Three things I would want to say in closing. Number one, inequality in the world is worsening. The rich are becoming richer, the rich are becoming richer, and the poor are becoming poorer. That's the reality of the world. The second thing that I would want to say is that financial independence is a process. It's a plan that you have to put in place. You're not going to be financially independent by accident. There are many ways of becoming financially independent. You can become financially independent as an employee, although you increase the odds of becoming financially independent when you are an entrepreneur or an investor. The third thing that I would want to say is that delay your gratification. The people that do not have the capacity and the capability of delaying their gratification rarely become financially independent. That's the long and short of it. And the key word that we have used today is frugality. Aim to be frugal, at least for the time that you are executing on your financial independence plan. If you cannot delay gratification, you're not going to be financially independent. That's the long and short of it. The best way to get a hold of me is through LinkedIn. Just type in LinkedIn Themba Mazibuko and communicate with me via LinkedIn. Then we can take it up from there, Tafadza.
Thank you. As Themba has said, if you want a personal financial coaching, where maybe you share your details, your numbers, those things we can't do on the show. If you want maybe advice on which investments that suits your finances, and maybe that's, if you're not in South Africa, that suits your environment and things like that, then you can get hold of Themba on LinkedIn. You can send him a message, then you pick it up from there. You can also contact us, then we'll pass on the message. We have got our WhatsApp number on the Facebook page, and you can write us an email to tafazwa@tafazwamazibukospeaks.co.za. You can also visit our website, www.tafazwamazibukospeaks.co.za. You can also get our products there. And you can also get our products on Amazon if you are not in South Africa. And you can also like, subscribe, and share our YouTube channel, which is the dream that was worth fighting for. We really appreciate you joining us. I hope you're implementing what we are being taught on this platform. As for me, I'm implementing. And I'm growing, and it's a matter of time before I become financial independent. So join me on this journey and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Cheers.